Well, welcome back to Bringing Hope and Freedom. We are going to continue on our conversation on finances. I'm excited to do that. We, Matt, are your hosts, Matt Holly and Pastor Kirk, and we hope that you have been finding a sense of freedom and a pathway forward on your finances, that these conversations have been helpful for you, and we're going to keep on going as it relates to finances. So Holly, what are we going to talk about?
So we ended with, on the last episode, Matt was talking about how he has a lot of anxiety around finances. And we just kind of wanted to talk about, what does healthy anxiety around your finances look like?
Okay. Like healthy, what's a healthy amount of concern?
Well, you know me, I don't have any concern. No.
Yeah.
Remember, yeah.
You have no concern about,
Yeah.
well, you have concern about other things.
Right.
In life, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but you just don't have a lot of concern around finances.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have some concern, like, let's make sure these bills get paid on time. Let's make sure, you know, we have food in the fridge. Whereas sometimes Matt is like, I don't know, are we going to be living in the car? You know?
Right.
Yeah. Because you did say that, right?
Right.
Do you say that often?
No.
Maybe you should explain a little bit better what you meant.
I'm someone who, I've lost my job before.
Okay.
Okay, after 9/11, lost my job, kind of like a lot of people did.
Yeah.
So at that time, we had, what is it? They tell you have like 6 months, 7 months worth of your, that saved of what you would make on a paycheck, you know, saved up for 6 months, which we did. And for, I want to say it took me about 3 months to find another job. And, you know, we dwindled away at that, and we always build it back up. So it's always there. But in my head, there's always a chance of
That it could happen
losing
again.
my job.
Okay.
And then, you know.
Was that the first time you ever lost your job?
Yes.
In your adult life?
Yes.
Okay.
From the age of 16 till however old I was at that time, I worked.
Are you
all
trying
the
to
time.
keep your age secret, or do we?
No,
do we not
I'm not.
know?
I am not young, as Pastor Kirk says. I'm part of the older crowd.
Well, I was just saying, there's a gap. Right now, we would call older people 45 plus.
Okay.
You're older if you're 45 or below. Right now, you know, you're considered young if you're 45 or younger.
Okay.
I don't set these rules.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm 45, and I'll be 46 very soon.
Well, then you're still young, man. It's 45
I've
and
got
below.
like 3 months, and
Live
then
it
I
up.
just go
Live it up, man.
But
Take another trip to Italy.
and you know, we laugh about that, but like in my head, you know, that was a dream vacation for
Sure,
us.
absolutely.
But also in my head, I'm going, hey, that money I'm spending over there, I could pay off the car. I could, you know, pay.
So even if you don't
So
have
many mortgage
okay,
payments.
so even if you don't have a healthy fear or healthy anxiety, you still have fear and anxieties around finances. It seems like,
Yeah.
okay, it's still there. So even if you have savings, and even if you're doing responsible spending, and even if you have the resources necessary to do the things that you want to do, you still there's just still this lingering fear of the what ifs.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's unpack that, because I think fear and anxiety is a good conversation to have, whether we're having it about finances or anything, because I do think that these are spiritual things, and they're great spiritual conversations. Being concerned, fear is such a broad term.
Right.
And fear by itself, or an awareness of something being important, is not unhealthy. So I like to break it up and make it simple for people. If you were standing in front of a Mack truck and it was going 65 miles an hour at you, and you were standing in front of it, you should be concerned.
Right.
If you're not concerned, there's a problem, because you're going to die. If you're standing at the top of a building and you lean over it and you're not attached to something, you will fall. And there should be concern or fear around the realities that we all face, because we all face them. And acting as if they're not there, or I should say this, faith is not acting like the problems don't exist, or that responsibilities aren't real, or we don't have to do that. That's not what faith is. And too often, I think people, because of ignorance, a lack of definition, or because of poor teaching, think that faith is like pretending as if the problems aren't real, Or when someone gets a diagnosis, they think faith is acting as if that diagnosis wasn't communicated to them, or that money doesn't actually matter and it's going to show up on a tree outside, so don't worry about it. Those are not healthy understandings. I think those would be that's an unhealthy definition of faith. And I think that acting as if you're not, or you shouldn't have a good level of concern or quote unquote fear over things that matter, that would be unhealthy. So if someone says, oh, well, don't fear that, or don't be concerned about that at all, no, that's unhealthy. No, because you do need to be like, how are you going to eat? Where are you going to live? These are healthy things. And I think right now in our world, there's a lot of unhealthy teaching, and there's a lot of unhealthy mindsets that people have over things that are really important, like a job. Well, if you don't have a job, who is going to pay for your life? And unfortunately, the answer is somebody else. And what people don't understand is that's very, very unhealthy. It's very unhealthy. And we have a lot of people who are living, I think, in a spoiled lifestyle. Other people are propping their lives up. You know, it's interesting when you look at some of the statistics. I think the vast majority don't leave home till 30 or something. I think the numbers, Carson, fact checker, why don't you give us the actual stat on that? But it's a huge number. And when you look at just house ownership, home ownership in our country, I think most first-time home buyers are in their 40s now, Carson. I think that's another thing to check. But I think people are buying their first home at age 40 now, where I want to say in the 70s and 80s, they were in their 20s. Even in their 90s, I think they were still in their 20s. But between the 90s and where we are today, we've gone from our 20s into 40 being first-time home buyers. The very first home they buy is in their 40s. And I want to say that there's a huge majority of people now that are living at home almost like well into their 20s, if not 30 years old. Carson, do we got a couple of fact checks on that?
Yeah, it says average age someone leaves home is between 28 and 31 years old.
Okay. So that's the average age when they're leaving home now. And the first-time home buyer?
Median age right now is 59 years old.
Median age, but what about first-time home buyer?
40, sorry. 40 is a record high right now.
Yeah. So when you think about it, we got some issues as it relates to some of these what would be considered general responsibilities in life. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're coming out of your covering from your family. And I think that there's practical issues that these people are facing because things are more expensive. Right. So I'm not attacking people. I'm just trying to lay the landscape of what is. Groceries are more expensive. Insurance is more expensive. Homes are more expensive. So they're facing practical realities, right? Okay, so they're facing, but the actual truth of it is that's always been true. It's never not been true. Things are always more expensive. They always go up. Now they're going up at a higher rate probably in the last 4 to 5 years than they have previously. There's reasons for that. But people have always faced the pressure of when do they step out on their own. That's not different. People have always faced the pressure of when do I buy a home or provide for my family. That's not different. People have always had to answer the question of how am I going to eat, provide, and live. This is not something new, but how we're addressing that question and how we're addressing that concern as a society is really changing. And what I see in young people's lives and what I see in families is I see families that the helicopter mom has turned into the helicopter family. And that mom and dad are involved in everything. And people are just like unwilling to allow their children to go through pain. And it starts at 4, 5 years old. They are helicoptering their friends. They're helicoptering their experiences on the playground. It's like, don't do this. You're going to get this disease and this. And everybody's fear has taken over the parenting process. And so we've got families that are just overwhelmed with anxiety and fear about raising children. And also, I want to say that's of good concern too, because the things that are happening to kids are crazy. And so they're facing the pressures, but rather than face the pressures head on, what people are doing is they're isolating. They're not just insulating their kids, they're isolating their kids. And they're removing the pressure of life from them. But man, that's creating this thing where kids are not able to face the pressures of life. Simple things like friendship, rejection, communication, all the stuff that we need to be healthy adults that you guys run your life with, they're not getting that. Right. So yeah, do they need to figure out how to pay for things? Yes, but we've always had to. What I think is going on is we're not preparing them for the hardships of life because we're isolating them from those. And then one day when mom and dad just decide, I don't want to foot this bill anymore, if that even happens, they're getting pushed out into the world. They're not ready for it.
They don't know how to act. They don't know what to do.
You know what to do. And I just don't think it's their fault. I think it's poor parenting. And I think it's poor education. And I think it's poor mentorship and poor leadership. And just to be really self-critical, I think it's the church's fault. I think the church has just become so soft on people in its teaching and how it raises, I think the church is responsible for raising up families, not the school system, not the government. And I think the church has the moral foundation of God's word and has the calling from God to do this. Marriage is not an institution of the government. Marriage is an institution of God. And everything in family revolves around marriage. So the church, I think, has stopped teaching people how to be married God's way. And therefore, parents are not able to stay together. I think it's something 3 out of 4 people in our society right now come from broken homes. They will have an experience of divorce inside of their family. So what does that mean? That means they're married to someone who had a divorce or their parents had a divorce. Just to give definition, we can fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I think it's in the 70 percentile now of people who experience divorce in their families. Carson, what do we have on that?
63%.
63%. So we've got brokenness in the marriage. Therefore, we got brokenness in families. And the church, I think, is responsible for that, not the government, not the education system. So I want to be self-critical as we have these conversations. And the result of all of this brokenness inside the families is children are not getting prepared for the realities of life. They're not prepared for the pressures of work. They're not prepared for the pressures of providing and making decisions. And they're not ready to answer the questions, the base questions of life.
Why do you think that has happened to the church over these last years? Do you think it has to do with like the culture and people saying, well, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, or I don't want to, like we have to love everybody no matter what?
Keep the attendance numbers up.
Well, yeah, I think it's a number of things. I mean, it's a broad question, but I do think that if we had to generalize, what we could say is consumer mentality versus the call of God. Let's put it that way, just for this conversation. If I have a consumer mentality as a church leader, then my approach is going to be what makes the people happy and what brings the people back. Mm-hmm. That's what my approach is going to be. And so I'm going to not do certain things consciously and intentionally. And I reject the idea that people aren't doing things consciously or unintentionally. That's not true. They could be doing it out of ignorance, meaning they don't know that what they're doing is going to be harmful, but they are doing it on purpose. So you're doing it consciously, you're doing it intentionally. It doesn't mean that you're doing it maliciously as a church leader. So I want to give them an out. They might just not understand that what they're doing is going to harm people. But I think there's a consumerism mentality that is in our culture. We are a consumer-based culture. All right. When you think about economics, because we're talking about finances, let's talk about economics for a second. Okay. The vast majority of our economic system comes from consumerism. You've got financing, you've got government spending, and you've got consumption. And anytime government spending and financing outweighs consumption, you're going to have a slowdown in our economy. You can fact check that too, Carson, but I'm pretty sure that's true.
He's busy today.
Okay. Well, I want people to understand that there are answers to these things. Right. There are reasons that they're going on. And I think unpacking those reasons in specificity is important. And information or education leads to empowerment. Right. So how do we move from a place of fear and anxiety into a place of faith? It's education. That is a big way. And so spiritually speaking, we are educated by going into God's word, by studying these things, and by God revealing things to us. And again, it's not an either or, it's a both. God has provided 99% of the things that you're going to hear from God are in his word. It's there. And so we can educate and empower ourselves. And I think that's how we move from fear and anxiety into faith.
You bring that up, like that we can find all this in the word. And it's funny because I'm on X scrolling all the time, and the other day I read that, God never carried the money when he was out preaching. He always gave it to somebody else to take care of. And
Jesus, you're talking about Jesus.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Just saying, we're gonna get fact checked.
We're gonna get hammered on the comments for that one.
Yeah.
Between that and Hall's Amazon thing, I've heard more mentions about
Your Amazon cart.
Yes.
Her $1 million Amazon
I've
cart.
had people walk up to me and go, "You should see my girlfriend,"
All right. So
and I'm like, "Yes, they are probably all just as bad." But anyways, I was reading about how, Jesus never worried about it when he sent out his disciples. He didn't give them money. He told them to go with nothing in hand, and that it would all be provided to them. As we've had this discussion and all that, it just really had me thinking a lot about, what am I worried about? And I don't want to come across as like, when Hall spends $5, I'm in their like room yelling at her, like, why'd you go to Target? We can't be going there.
Yeah.
We're going away in a couple weeks. I still do all those things, even though I know it's going to drain the bank account.
Sure.
I want to be the guy with $1 million in there and still have everything he wants. But I know you can't have both. But yeah, reading lately, since we've talked about this, it just seems to show up.
Well, yeah, and I said this in church this Sunday, actually, and I think this is important in this conversation. Fear, worry, and anxiety are not worship of the God of the Bible.
Right.
Fear, anxiety, and worry are worship, if we're going to call it a God, the God of mammon, the God of this world, the God of finances, the God of money. Fear, worry, and anxiety are human experiences, and I'm not being critical or attacking. I felt so bad. Someone came up to me and said, I suffer from anxiety and talking to people. And they were like concerned about telling me because of what I said. I'm like, no, I'm not attacking you. I'm trying to identify for you the influence that's happening inside of your life. Fear, anxiety, and worry are not of God. Meaning, when fear is controlling you and crippling you, that's not of God. When worry and anxiety over the future is crippling you to the point where you can't act, that's not of God, because God wants good things for your life. The fear of God, meaning the reverence and the respect and the honor of God, is going to move you to action. It's not going to move you to complacency and excuse making. Right. Okay. So fear, anxiety, and worry are the worship of the God of mammon. Faith is the worship of the God of heaven. That's what it is. And so we have to ask ourselves, how do I move from a mentality of fear and anxiety into a mentality of faith? And the Bible bridges that gap, because the Bible is the word of God. It's the promises of God to us. And we can stand upon his word, not our wants, not our desires, not our fears, but upon what he has said to be true. Right. And there is always a gap. Like, I'm a teacher, I'm a Christian leader, but guys, I have fears. I have got concerns too. And I face those things all the time, and we have them. But how do we face those fears? Well, because of a relationship. Right. I face those fears in my relationship with God. I pray and I seek him, and I learn to rest in the fact that he is my provider, and that at the end of the day, I'm not taking any of these things with me. Right. They're not going to last forever. So let me just get into the consumption a little bit. Did you look into the consumption on economics? All right, our economic structure works off the consumption of the economy, the people spending their money, the government spending, and then financing. And anytime that financing and government is outweighing the consumption, you're going to have a slowdown in the economy. We are a consumer-based economy. We just are. We consume. And as a result of the type of communities that we have and the way that we're oriented, other people conserve. We are not a conservation-based people. We are a consumption-based people, and that's why we're so production heavy, and that's why our economy moves and operates on production in that way. And if we don't take account of our consumption, and if we don't take control of our consumption, we will overconsume. Right. We will overconsume. So there's a difference between being afraid because you're constantly overconsuming and you're using more than what you have, and having concern and fear over how am I going to be able to provide for my family. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think we have this problem inside of our family structure where there's breakdown in the family. Because there's breakdown in the family, people and kids are not being prepared to handle. They're not being trained up. And I think where I would be critical of the school system is the school system's not teaching the kids about how to handle their finances. The school system's not teaching the kids about how to have a healthy job. Our education system is a little bit backwards, but I think our education system is backwards because the people's mentality about what's really important is backwards. And that's the responsibility of the church. The church's job is to be the moral sounding alarm sounders of the culture. And if the church takes on a consumption-based mentality where we're over concerned about whether people are happy with us and we're less concerned about what God says, there's going to be a problem in the culture. The culture is downstream from church, downstream from faith. And so to get specific, if the church, and the church has, I think it's not even arguable. I think it's a fact. The last 40 or 50 years, the greater church, the capital C church, has been very concerned with a consumer-based mentality. And so we care about, are they coming back? What's the dollar figure? Okay. And our measurement of success has been there. On this side, if the fear of God and doing what God says, the measurement of success is discipleship. And we can relate discipleship to doing what Jesus Christ said to do, following Jesus Christ. We're disciples of Jesus Christ. So the standard over here is discipleship, following Jesus Christ, the fear of God. The standard over here is consumption, the fear of man. If the church chooses the fear of man and consumption, culture and society is going to have a problem. And we are facing, I think, those problems right now, specifically inside the family, that we're not raising kids in such a way where they can handle anxiety, where they can handle pressure and responsibility. That's normal, meaning job, provision, home, kids. You okay? Yeah. Like the base things that make a society run. Unfortunately, we're not preparing kids to do that. Later and later, they're handling it. So maybe by 30, they're at a place where they can move out. Maybe they get married. Maybe by 40 they can provide for themselves and they're outside, which is crazy. They're renting in that gap, or maybe they're living with family in that gap. But I think it's a greater root issue of not teaching responsibility, not raising our children properly. We are over concerned about exposing them to harmful things. We're over concerned about exposing them to difficult things. The second a kid has a difficulty, mom and dad are on the phone. And this is where I'm going to get the school systems back. Mom and dad is on the phone calling the principal, calling the teacher, reaming them out because their kid popped off on somebody else. And why did my kid get hit? Because your kid made fun of the other kid. Right. I don't know about you guys, but on the schoolyard when I was a kid, if you're making fun, you're going to get hit.
Yeah,
Yes.
And now we want to have a lawsuit about that.
Right.
And act like it's not normal. But no, that is totally normal. And it's actually important to learn, right?
Yeah.
We were just talking about it. When someone mistreats us or someone says something, we've got to learn self-control.
Yeah.
But we all start off on the playground or in the house with our siblings with learning that. But we're not holding people accountable to their decisions at the very youngest of their ages. And that produces adults that are not ready for the pressures of life. And I know it might not seem connected to finances, but it really is.
It's like a trickle-down effect.
It is, because finances reveal the standard of our hearts. But in order to handle finances, you have to be prepared to it, because finances are a weight. It's a measurement of our lives. And so if we've never been able to handle the pressure of provision, if we can't handle the pressure of making friends, if we can't handle the pressure of decision making that comes when we're 4 or 5, how are we gonna handle the pressure of a mortgage or provision or food or all that?
I read once that if your parents own a home, you're more likely to own a home. But if your parents are renters, you're more likely to be a renter.
Yeah, if your parents have a college education, you're more likely to have a college. And education follows the exposure of the family. Home. Why? Because the family sets the culture for that child.
Right.
Yeah.
It communicates what's important. Poverty is passed down as a cultural element, not because people want to be in poverty. They don't know anything else. Just like divorce is passed down. Just like addiction is passed down, not because people want these things, but because they've never been shown another way. And so what we've done is we've said, government, you've got to teach people. No, church, you've got to convict people and tell them the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
And only God entering that situation is going to shift poverty. Only God entering the situation is going to shift these generational dynamics that we see. And I do believe wholeheartedly that is a church's responsibility. And we've got to be willing to, quote unquote, make people mad enough because we love them enough by telling them the truth. So, I did it in kind of a funny way. A couple weeks ago, I called people's families trash. Now, I didn't exactly call.
Did you catch flack for that? Is that why you?
Well, the staff were like, maybe choose.
up?
The staff was like, hey, do you know that you said that? And I was like, okay, I will.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't saying that everyone's family is trash. What I was trying to say is, comparatively to God, yeah, your family's junk is what it is. It's garbage. And everybody wants God to clean their garbage. And it's like, God is not trying to give you clean garbage back. God is trying to clean the garbage out of your life so you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know why everyone's afraid of calling trash or garbage or terrible It's like, don't call my terrible boyfriend who beats me terrible. Well, what would you call him?
Exactly.
How would you?
You have another word
What,
for that?
this nice man
Yeah.
that beats you privately? No. No, call it what it is. But it's all related to the same thing. In my opinion, it's all related to the same thing. And so if we're going to get control of our finances, it's because we're learning self-control and all these other things. But we don't have our families operating in self-control. We don't have so therefore our children aren't doing it. So when they become adults, they don't know what to do. And then we're not preparing for the realities. I mean, finances are important. They're not being prepared in the school system. They're not being prepared at home. Mom and dad aren't practicing these things. Their yes isn't their yes, and their no is not their no. And so when kids, I think it's now the average, you can look this up. It used to be the average person was on a job for 5 years, I think in the early 2000s. Then it went down to 3, and I think we're at a year and a half.
I laugh because Hall says, you only have a job for about 3 years and you find another one. It's not always me looking. Sometimes they call me and I go.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just a bad person to say that because I've had the same job for so long.
It's heavily based on age. But
Okay.
for people between 16 and 30 years old, it's about a year to 2 years.
Yeah, right. But that's the future workforce. That's what I'm trying to talk about. It's like those 16 to 33-year-olds are the future workforce. Right. Whereas the baby boomers, I think, make the vast majority of the economy right now. I think the baby boomer generation is about 70% of the GDP, and they're the vast majority of the workforce. Even though they're retiring at a greater rate than any other generation, they're still the majority of the workforce. So when we think about the matriculation of these things, we've got people that were not preparing for their circumstances. They don't know how to follow through. It's not their fault. They've been taught this. And now they're being faced with rising costs and rising pressures, but we haven't prepared them to do it. This is why I think people struggle with their finances more than anything else, is all along the way they haven't been being prepared. So when they finally get a job and they finally get these things, they don't know what to do. And so the church, I think, has to start to so what's the response? Okay, so where do we go from here? Well, I think the church has to start discipling people. I think the church has to start discipling people to be married. I mean, we, as a staff in our church, we were just having this conversation today, and they were talking about parenting. And I said, listen, you can't teach people how to parent who don't know how to be married. Oh. All healthy parenting comes from a healthy marriage. And it's like, you're just treating symptoms. The root of unhealthy parenting is an unhealthy marriage because no one showed them how to be married. They've got to learn how to be married first. And a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage, parents well. Then you can add the tools of parenting, and then you talk about the stages of life. But a healthy marriage will meet those things well together. It's designed to be done together. And unfortunately, we have a breakdown in marriage. We have a breakdown in family. We blame the school system. We throw it on the government. And the root of it is the church being consumer-oriented and not operating in the fear of God. And that's also the root of finances. The problem in finances is people are consumer-oriented. Me, 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 versus the fear of God.
Right.
Okay. And when we bring the fear of God into what does God say for me to do about my finances, this is a pathway to freedom. This is a pathway to slavery and debt. And it works the same way. And finances are a very clear mirror on these things because of it, because of what it puts us in. It puts us into debt. We have to borrow to keep consuming at the rate that we're consuming, versus over here, we live with what we have. And God says, learn to live with what you have, and I'm going to give you more than what you need.
Yeah, live within your means.
And the world says live outside of your
Yeah.
means so that you borrow and you eventually become into debt, and debt leads to slavery, and slavery is what ultimately sin is trying to create inside of all of our lives. But Jesus came to set us free. For whom the Son sets free is free indeed. So the fear of God is going to lead to freedom. The fear of man is going to lead to slavery. And consumption and overconsumption is going to lead to bondage and slavery and debt. And it reveals what we ultimately believe about God. Do we believe that God is our provider? Will he provide more than what we need to live if we do what he says?
Yes.
All right. And so it's true, having fear over or concern over how we're going to afford our lives and what we're going to do is important. But that concern should lead us to our provider, and our provider is God. And then there's practical steps that people can take and get counseling and get guidance on what to do with their finances. And if we have listeners that want help with this, email me. I got financial advisors that will help you for free. I'm not joking, because we're not just talking to the world, we're talking to our listeners. So if you need help with any of these things and you want to unpack them, I've got people that will help you unpack. We'll get you the courses, we'll get you the content, we'll walk you into financial freedom. We will. We'll show you how to do it, because there's a way to do it. And you follow the biblical principles, and those things will set you free in your life. You don't have to live in fear of finances. And can I leave us with this thought real quick? I want to say something. I think that our culture is taught to save for something that's not real, and that's retirement. When I was thinking about our culture and I was thinking about money, the fear is having enough to retire. That's the fear. And I think that's a made up fear that our culture has created because it's so consumption oriented. And I think people have to take control of the messaging that they're getting in life. And I would encourage those people, if you're afraid of not having enough for retirement, I want you to go look up how long people live after they retire. I want you to go look it up, because it's going to freak you out. It's short. It's so short. And so people are afraid of this thing that's not actually real. And they're projecting all these things that Carson laid on them, man.
An average of 15 to 20 years.
Okay. That's good.
Average, yeah.
That's
I know we were given the warning at our times all messed up, but we met with our financial advisor, and he's looking at everything, and he's telling us, your finances look good. You've got money saved. Here's where you're at when you guys plan to retire, and everything's great. But, and then he goes into all this other stuff, and, the two of us were both smiling, and we're real excited. We're going to be great. We got all this money. And then he tells us, if money ends fall, or if this happens when you're old. And, me being concerned, I'm I need bubble wrap to wrap Hall in because she falls all the time. All this stuff starts going through my head, and we get off.
That is a legit.
We get off the call with him, and Hall goes, "I know you're freaking out." I said, "Yeah, but how much of this is really going to happen to us?"
Well, and here's the thing: do you want to live inside of that fear of all the what ifs, or you want to live inside of faith? And I think that people have to take control of the messaging that they're getting in their life. Number one, you're not going to live forever. Well, you're going to live forever, but you're not going to live in this body forever.
Right.
Stop trying to do that. Stop trying to do that. If Jesus comes back, we're solid, and we're going to be with him forever. And if he doesn't, you're solid because you're going to be with him forever. And you don't really have any control over the amount of time you're going to live, so live it up.
Right.
Live it, man. And everyone's saving for and acting as if they're gonna need all this stuff, and they're gonna take. I'm where are you taking it? You're not taking it with you. And so what it does is, so people who do have resources, they're not using their resources in this life. They're storing it up for a day that never comes. And all of this stuff is stored up and I'm going to talk about this eventually in this series that we're talking about. All this stuff is stored up in barns that will never be used.
Right.
And it just goes to nothing or to no one. And it's such a backwards view of what God has told us to do with our finances. It's backwards. He's saying plant seeds. He's saying use it. He's saying go out and build. Go out and live. I mean, so many people won't live until they retire. It's I want to retire to do the things that I want to do. What? What are you doing, man?
What are you doing now?
What are you doing? That's terrible. I feel so terrible when I hear people say that. And I test them. So let me test you. This is what I want to end with. If I get, okay, what's a lot of money? We'll test Holly. We'll test you later.
What's
If
a
I
lot of
gave,
money?
okay, so I'm gonna go up. You tell me when to stop. If I gave you $5 million today, would you be like, I don't have to work anymore?
Yes.
Carson. There you go. Carson, the 24-year-old speaks.
Yeah.
He just walked out
I
of the studio.
would say yes to that.
Okay, if I gave you $5 million,
$5 million, yeah.
you'd stop working. Pressure of finances would go away for you.
The pressure of finances?
The pressure of finances would go away. You're like, I'm done. You're calling your work. You've been working there for 25 plus years, long time. You're like, hey guys, I'm out.
Yeah, sorry.
Deuces. Okay, so that's fine. That's so I want to see. Okay, so I give you $5 million. Pressure of finances off. You're not. What are you going to do?
What am I going to do?
What are you going to do with your life?
Oh, jeez. I don't know. I would probably. You're right. You're right. That is what people are thinking. Like, I don't.
What are you
know.
gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know.
We're gonna start traveling.
Yeah,
A
but
lot more.
Then is $5 million going to be enough? I don't know.
See, but here's why I want to. Here's why this is a test. This starts to reveal what's really important to people. So many people don't have an answer to this question.
Yeah. That's
Some
so
people,
true.
some people, the number just keeps going up, and I'm like, well, here you have your answer. Your God is money, because no matter what, it's never enough. So if it's if the answer is that it's never enough, then your God's your money. You got a different problem, okay? But then as they start to answer this question, then you start to really find out what they're actually after and what they actually believe. And for a Christian, I think a Christian needs to answer that in a very specific way. And I think because they can't, that's why they kind of struggle with their finances, and that's why they struggle with their purpose in their life. If you gave me $1 billion, $100 million, whatever it is, the answer is the same. But I'm not trying to attack people. I'm just saying I spent 20 years trying to find that. So now I know that no matter how much money I get, I know what I'm doing with that money, and I know what I'm going to do no matter what. And I've made that decision for my life. And that's why at the end of the day, I can face the fears and the issues and the problems the way that I can. And I think other people don't have that. I want them to have that. I'm not doing what I'm doing for the money that I'm getting from it. And I don't live my life for the money that I receive for it. And I feel free to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And I want, now there are days where I don't feel free. There are days where I feel like the pressures and the stuff tries to take over me. I had it just like a couple weeks ago. And I was like, get off of me, man. I don't want that. I don't want that. You know, but so the pressures are real, the problems are real, but there's answers to them. There are real answers to them.
That makes me think now.
Yeah, and I think you should think about it. I think we all should think about it, because we get these answers are really important answers. These questions are really important questions, and we need to wrestle with them. We wrestle with them in different ways at different stages of life. I think there's probably some of our older listeners, they're at a different phase of life. Maybe they are retired, and they're asking themselves, and they're looking back on their life, and they're thinking, how have I lived it, and what am I leaving behind? And I just want to tell them, don't waste a minute.
Right.
Don't waste 1 cent. Don't waste 1 minute. And maybe the next episode I'll give a testimony of that for us to hear. So we've appreciated you listening to this. We hope that you're benefiting from this conversation on finances. You can reach out to us, like and subscribe, right?
Yeah, alm.tv.
You can, reach out to us, alm.tv, info@alm.tv. If you don't go to a local church, find a local church that's not full of trash people. And if you're in the Largo, Clearwater area, I don't think we've got trash people at our church. I think we've got great people, even though their families might be trash. We love you guys, and we can't wait to the next time that we talk.